Hello and welcome to another episode of the Cyberwork with Infosec podcast. Each week, I sit down with a different industry thought leader to discuss the latest cybersecurity trends and how these trends are affecting the work of Infosec professionals, as well as tips for those trying to break in or move up the ladder in the cybersecurity industry. Our guest today, Alissa Knight, is the senior analyst at Aite Group, an independent research and advisory firm focused on business, technology, and regulatory issues and their impact on the financial service industry. She's here to discuss another byproduct of the connected future, namely the risk to be had from an insecure security practices in connected cars. Alissa is going to tell us about some of the most egregious cases on record, how we can prevent future disasters, and what you as a burgeoning cybersecurity professional need to know to get involved in the practice of protecting connected devices. Alissa Knight is a senior analyst with Aite Group, where she performs focused research into cybersecurity issues impacting the financial services, healthcare, and fintech industries through the assessment of sector trends, creation of segment taxonomies, market sizing, preparation of forecasts, and developing industry models. Alissa said her passion professionally is meeting and learning from extraordinary leaders around the world and sharing her views on the disruptive forces reshaping global markets. Alissa, thank you for being here today.
Hi, Chris. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure. So let's go back to... Sorry?
I said that was a great intro, by the way. Thank you.
Oh, good. Yeah, we'll cover all the bases right up front, and then we'll just wrap it up, and it'll be it. Just want people to know. So to start out with the usual first question for interviews, how far back does your interest in computers, tech, and security go? Is this something you were always interested in, or did that come later in life?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, so I started with a 486 SX25.
Wow.
Back when the CPUs were square, and you put the CPU fan on. So yeah, they go back quite a ways. I started really getting into hacking when I was 13. Typical Hollywood story, hacked into a government network, got caught, arrested when I walked onto the school grounds. They were waiting for me, and yeah, and the charges were dropped because I was interviewed without my parents there. They thought I guess they didn't realize they were interviewing a minor. It was like a couple weeks before my 18th birthday.
Wow.
And yeah, so I got off on a technicality.
What did you hack into, and sort of what was it? Just I want to see if I can do this.
Yeah, it was a government network. It wasn't for any, there was no really malintent. It was, can I do this? It was more out of curiosity. And the good news is that, because of that, I really had an opportunity to get a second chance and realize that, it wasn't a black hat that I wanted to be. It was a white hat, and I wanted to be an ethical hacker, and I wanted to uncover these vulnerabilities that were so systemic across so many things. It's, and nothing has really changed since then, right? So like back then it was all about, getting the technology out there, getting the connectivity out there, and security was always an afterthought. So I'm a recovering hacker. I've fallen off the wagon a few times. I've been doing this for about 20 years. Seems like so long ago. So yeah, so it's been a while.
Wow. So I've asked this of a couple of guests before, but you had a pretty concrete moment where you decided, oh, I'm on this side and I'm not on that side. So
it was an inflection point for sure.
yeah. So having armed police people, approach you at school probably is a pretty solid way to get that change happening.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely cocktail party bragging rights. All of a sudden, I was the nerd that was picked on all the time, and now I'm like being escorted off campus in handcuffs. Kind of puts you in the cool crowd, but actually because of all that, didn't end up returning back to school.
Okay.
I'm a serial entrepreneur. I did really turn my life around. I started my first company when I was 17, and I took it to a public company when I was 20, and started in my second startup and sold that when I was 27. So, for me, it was a very pivotal point in my life where, like you said, this was the demarcation point where I need to turn my life around. This is not who I want to be, and so for me, that was a wake-up call. So, okay, I can do this, and I can get paid. I can get paid very well doing this, and that's that. The rest is history.
You said you've fallen off the wagon a couple of times of white hattery. Is there any war stories you care to talk about, or
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and it's funny. So you, in the introduction, you described Aite Group, and I don't want the listeners to think that Aite Group is a cybersecurity consultancy
okay?
that does connected car penetration testing. It's not. It is an industry analyst firm. So Aite Group is sort of your Gartner for the financial services industry. So the large banks will subscribe to our research, and about around September of last year, I joined Aite as their first cybersecurity analyst in their new cybersecurity practice. So what happened was they were focused on anti-money laundering, financial crime, that sort of thing in the payment sector and retail banking, and said, you know what, a lot of the fraudsters, a lot of the anti-fraud stuff like synthetic identity fraud and mule accounts, stuff like that, is a lot of the same adversary on the cybersecurity side. So let's start a cybersecurity practice, and let's get someone in here who knows what she's talking about. At least I think I know what I'm talking about. At least I get the perception I do.
Right.
So that's kind of where I've ended at. So to answer your question, have I fallen off the wagon? Yes, I have, but as an analyst, meaning that now I'm a full-time writer. It's kind of funny. I'm a hacker turned CEO turned writer. Just this year, I've published a new book on hacking connected cars, which will come out under Wiley, and that actually will be hitting the bookshelves in a couple months.
Okay.
And so I have fallen off the wagon in the sense that I've been hacking connected cars over the last decade. I lived in Germany hacking connected cars for some of the largest automakers in the Stuttgart corridor. And now am really, I combine writing with hands-on practical lab work, right? So I'll write about how to hack a telematics control unit, but while I'm writing, I will be there hacking a TCU. So it's a sort of a different angle, a different voice in the analyst industry, where it's a combination of sort of the writing part, with the actual practical part, which is pretty rare in the analyst industry.
So my next question, and you've already sort of filled in a few of the gaps, but I want to sort of get an unbroken line here. Could you tell us a little bit about the career path that you've taken to get to the sort of senior level security analyst that you are now? I mean, you said you started a couple of businesses right out of high school and you became a CEO. So like, what was your journey like in terms of learning skills, starting things, trying things, breaking things, what have you?
You're gonna laugh, but I actually started out as a web designer, right? So it's funny. I'm probably the only hacker you'll ever meet that is majoring in marketing in the university and into accounting, and is also a former designer and artist. But I started out as a web designer. I had a company called Winter Rain Graphics. I was designing websites.
I can see it in my mind now with a name like that.
Exactly. And believe it or not, it was in Silicon Valley, so I don't know where I came with that.
Okay.
But I do live in Seattle now, but that's a different story. So, started out with a web hosting company doing web design and hosting websites. Then, my web servers were getting hacked all the time. At the time, it was teardrop attacks, if you remember that. And so my web servers were getting DOSed, and I didn't really know how to protect myself. I didn't know what to do. So the natural segue for me was go to the bookstore, buy a book, and figure this out, right? Okay. At the time, the SANS Institute, cybersecurity training, certified ethical hacker, all that stuff didn't exist, right? Today, a lot of the cybersecurity engineers have the luxury of going to cybersecurity training. They have the luxury of majoring, getting a master's degree in cybersecurity. All that stuff didn't exist back then.
Yeah.
So at the time it was IRC. I was on Internet Relay Chat on FNet. I come from the BBS days, right?
Yeah, sure.
Modded Oblivion and modded Renegade boards, upload-download ratios. And at the time, starting out on IRC, meeting other hackers and figuring it out on your own, faking it until you make it kind of thing. And then just, learning as you go, taking your bruises and, trying to figure out once you've defaced a website, how to restart, how to restart Apache, that sort of thing. Just figuring out as you go. And then, then that happened. I unfortunately went down the wrong path, made a wrong choice, and, got off, was very lucky to get myself out of that situation. Then realized, hey, I really am a leader. I really am great at starting things. I like to build things. So started my first company. It was a services company, believe it or not.
Okay.
When VPNs came about, it's God's gift to security, triple DES encryption.
Mm-hmm.
Sold that to a public company in British Columbia. Then took some time off, went to go work from some startups in the Valley in cybersecurity, and then went on to start my second startup, which was Applied Watch, and that was a CM solution for open source software like Snort, Inline, and Libre Tarpit. So once I sold that to Endace in New Zealand, took some time off again, became a fashion photographer, which is a totally other story.
Sure.
And then got back into penetration testing. So I've kind of been on the red team, sort of adversarial side of the equation my whole career. And then got into hacking connected cars after a contract win with an OEM in Germany. So that was my sort of segue into hacking connected cars. But I would say in summary, it was, sort of web designer to system administrator, where I was administering Linux boxes and stuff like that, networking, to cybersecurity and so forth. So
was most of your learning, I mean, like you said, there's a lot more sort of structured learning now, but at most points in your career, were you basically sort of an autodidact, sort of learning what you needed to learn in the moment and sort of finding the information where you could get it?
Yeah. So at the time, if any of your listeners remember Security Focus, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of times it was going to Security Focus and reading white papers or Googling, and a lot of times just playing with a lot of the exploits. So at the time, looking at the C source code for Teardrop, or, looking at some, back then you had to GCC -O and exploit. It's not so point and click now that is, these is Meterpreter and Metasploit and all that stuff. It's a lot easier to hack these days than it used to be. You had to actually get your exploit compiled. But it was a lot of teach myself. It was Alissa Knight University, kind of teaching myself.
So what does your average day at Aite Group look like? What are some jobs, tasks, or responsibilities that are sort of a constant on most days?
Yeah, so as an analyst, I don't really like to cover Me Too companies. I'm really disrupting the analyst industry and trying to be a unique voice in the industry, in the sense that I don't really like to cover Me Too companies. The companies that are coming, hey, cover our pattern matching signature detection system. No, I want to cover something in machine learning. Okay. Cover our antivirus. No, I want to cover EDR, endpoint detection response. Cover our SIEM solution. No, I want to cover SOAR, that sort of thing. So security orchestration. So I like to, so what does my daily job look like? It's meeting with vendors, it's meeting with reporters, it's building my brand, my personal brand, while in parallel building the brand of Aite Group. So it's kind of like serving multiple masters, where I need to make sure that I'm continuously putting content out there and being a thought leader and a subject matter expert that's recognized in the cybersecurity industry as putting good content out. So that can build trust with the industry, who are reading my research, and vendors that, hey, I need to be covered by Alissa. I need Alissa to write about our product and be an evangelist for our technology and our company that people take seriously and that's credible. And so I really need to continuously to build my brand, my personal brand, as well as Aite Groups is recognized in the cybersecurity industry for its research in cybersecurity. So my daily job is meeting with vendors, meeting with CISOs, understanding the pain points of buyers, and also understanding the latest technology out there that the vendors are putting out. Because as you know, cybersecurity changes every day. It's changing every day. New zero-day exploits are coming out, while we're talking.
Yeah.
So things are continuously changing and evolving, and just being caught up with it is really important as an analyst.
Okay. Now, it sounds like your sort of two primary foci right now are writing and meeting with your clients. Do you still do a lot of actual sort of penetration testing or hacking, or are you sort of compiling existing research these days more so?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. So I definitely traded the Meterpreter shell for Microsoft Word.
Okay. Right.
But I kind of call myself Guy Kawasaki in cybersecurity, right?
Okay.
But there is an element, like I said, of a disruption where I am while I'm writing about a network threat analysis solution,
Mhm.
I am actually deploying that NTA in front of a cardholder data environment, hacking into the CDE, taking the credit card numbers out of the database, exfiltrating it, and writing about what that product looked like from the adversary's perspective and what it looked like from the blue team perspective. So there is definitely this element that I bring of both practical as well as, authorship and really curating and creating new contents around what I'm doing.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about the most challenging case or security problem you ever worked on? What did you do to sort of turn it into a successful outcome?
I would say probably it would be in the connected car space.
Okay.
It's such a labyrinthine area of penetration testing. Any penetration tester, any senior penetration tester, you ask them, hey, can you do this connected car penetration test? Can you go hack this TCU? I've never done it before, but it's all the same. No, actually, it really isn't. And, I'll probably get trolled for saying this, but I don't care. It really is a labyrinthine, very focused, specialized area of penetration testing. You're dealing with different things. You're dealing with different, platforms. You're dealing with different connectivity. You're dealing with the CAN bus. You're dealing with all these things that you don't come across against an Apache or IIS web server. It's just very different. The challenge that I ran in was doing a penetration test against a head unit, and that's the infotainment system of the car. And really the challenge was, okay, we're facing sort of the kind of same vulnerabilities you would face in something running Android OS, right? So different head units will run different operating systems. You have TCUs that may run NVIDIA Linux. You have some head units that may be running Android. It really just depends on the OEM. The challenge was really, okay, I know how to breach a web server and pivot around within the Active Directory network and collect tokens or whatever, and Kerberos, you're getting active domain admin, right, in the AD environment. How do you pivot around on a car?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question.
Probably the most challenging section of my book was, okay, we're following the penetration testing execution standard here.
Yep.
I've done all of the other steps. Now I'm on the post-exploitation chapter. How the hell do you write on a post-exploitation step of a car?
Yeah.
And it really is, it's understanding sort of the fact that when you're pivoting around in a connected car, you still have connected components. That head unit still needs to communicate with other things. It still needs to talk to other ECUs, right? Whether it's the steering column that's connected to the CAN bus, which the head unit is connected to. It's understanding that the in-vehicle network is very much like an intranet. While it may not talk TCP/IP, at least today, by the way, a lot of fleets are moving to Ethernet, but while a lot of it is CAN today, it's still networked components. They're still networked ECUs.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, let's jump right into that. To start at the beginning, what have you found some of the most common attack vectors are that hackers are hacking into connected cars, either that you've done or that you've seen, done out there? What are the scariest possible vulnerabilities that you see right now in connected cars?
Yeah. So, I would say the answer to that is connectivity, right?
Okay.
So right now, whether it's autonomous vehicles, connected cars with autopilot, they need connectivity. You have manufacturers, automobile makers who are communicating over what's called OTA, or over-the-air updates, with the connected car.
Okay.
So they need to be able to communicate with that back end, and that is typically usually always GSM. So the attack vectors, the attack surface that mobile devices, that mobile phones have over GSM apply to a car, right? So the things that you're facing with your mobile phone, such as rogue base stations, are the things that you face with the connected car.
Okay.
And really I think the scariest thing that I would say is really just knowing that you're driving down the street with you and your family in the car, and somebody that's possibly targeting that car has a rogue base station set up. Your car, the telematics control unit within your car is going to connect to a cell tower with the strongest signal. Now, if you've got a rogue BTS projecting a stronger signal than a legitimate base station, your car is going to connect to that rogue base station. And it's very cheap and very simple to set up a rogue BTS these days. So I think that would probably be the scariest for me, just knowing that if you're driving a car with you and your family in it, and a vulnerability could potentially lead to loss of life or safety concerns with you and your family, it's way different than the ramifications of a compromised web server, and having your website defaced or even ransomware encrypt data that's not backed up. For me, from a connected car perspective, it's a way different playing field when you're talking about the potential for loss of life.
Yeah,
and if you control that network fabric through the rogue base station, you control that with the world of whatever's connected to that.
Yeah,
right?
even if it takes
disable encryption, you can do all of that.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. And even if you can sort of get the car back on, on board in a few seconds, like that few seconds can make all the difference. So
right. Because you have some companies that are talking about MSSPs for connected cars. There's several that are saying, hey, we monitor connected cars from our security operations center. But what? Okay, so you're going to respond to an attack on a car that I can drive right off of a cliff in a couple seconds while you're dealing with false positives and other things. You've got more time to respond when monitoring a computer network from a SOC than you do a car that's driving around on the road.
So what are what are the basic preventative measures or even advanced level preventative measures in cars rolling off the assembly line that aren't implemented as widely now as they should be that you would like to see as industry standard?
That's a good question. I think the best answer to that is going to be the concept of network segmentation and microsegmentation.
Okay.
So I have seen cars in doing penetration testing where the passenger wireless network is being shared with the wireless connectivity between the telematics control unit and the head unit. So, and being able to communicate with that TCU from the passenger Wi-Fi network. So why am I using the same wireless network as the TCU, which is the connectivity for the car? What I would like to see more of is OEMs creating head units or creating devices that implements the basic concepts and tenets of cybersecurity that we practice in regular computer networks. Because let's point the pink elephant out in the room, Chris.
Yeah.
Today, cars are not just cars. They're not, combustion engines. They're networks. They're networks with wheels. They're cell phones with wheels. And we should be securing cars the same way we secure computer networks. If we're doing network segmentation and they aren't flat networks in a computer network, then they sure as hell should be in something that I'm driving myself and my family in. The other thing is a lot of times, and a lot of people don't know this, but there are companies that are selling firewalls and intrusion detection systems for cars. So just as cars are now becoming these Ethernet networks and network devices in the in-vehicle network, and we haven't talked about V2V yet. We haven't even talked about vehicle-to-vehicle communication. But within the network of the car, you can implement IDS. You can implement firewalls. But a lot of the manufacturers aren't doing that because of the cost. It's always weighing cost with security, right?
So are these sort of firewalls and add-ons, these are things that are sort of commonly available that a connected car owner would be able to sort of get and install themselves, or how does that work?
Right, but I mean, here's the thing. In my experience in talking with a lot of the OEMs, when they're piecing these things together, you need to remember that the manufacturer, a lot of people think that the manufacturer, whether it's their Honda or their Daewoo, whatever it is, they think that they are the creators or manufacturers of all these pieces, the head unit, the TCU. No, the manufacturer of the car is just piecing together all of these other products from all these other companies in the supply chain. They're just Lego blocks that the manufacturer is just putting all together, right?
Yep.
So the thing is that they need to understand that with these individual pieces that they're putting together, there could be individual vulnerabilities in all those parts. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, there are firewalls that these OEMs can buy and implement, and there is segmentation they can do. However, they're weighing the cost of it with it. So I've seen OEMs complain over, the cost of a 10-cent cable, right?
Yeah.
A $2 cable. You multiply that by an entire fleet of cars, you're talking about a lot of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
For a $2 cable. So they're always constantly weighing the cost of it.
I mean, is that something that you would, if you had your druthers, that you would sort of make it a requirement? I mean, it sounds like it, right?
Yeah, I think what needs to happen is there needs to be some sort of legislation. There needs to be something that says, okay, automobile maker, you can't put this car out on the road unless there's network segmentation, microsegmentation between the in-vehicle network and the critical devices. The head unit should not be able to write to the CAN bus, or communicate commands to other ECUs in the car. You should have firewalls between particular components within the in-vehicle network. These are the things that I think should be there before the car is put on the road. We have, similar things within the computer industry, right? Certain things, whether it be safety or, whatever it may be, those things need to exist and need to be there. Let's look at role-based access control, right? Within Active Directory, you can do role-based access control, the option to implement RBAC and, assign users to different groups based on their function within the organization. Why aren't we doing this with the different ECUs and what they do and the functions they perform in the in-vehicle network?
Now, to go on the other side of that, if you find yourself the owner of a connected car, or maybe you've even had one for a while, and you're not sure if, your car, has all these sort of firewall or safety features, what can you do to check or ensure that your car's security protocols or other defenses are best utilized? I know it probably varies from car brand to car brand, but is there some sort of a resource where you can look and say, okay, I need to do this, this, and this?
Yeah, there have definitely been some manufacturers recently that if you search around on YouTube, you can see a lot of, OEMs and manufacturers have had their hands slapped for certain things. There is an increasing number of research within the automotive industry from the cybersecurity perspective. So I would definitely urge, if you're concerned about it, I would urge you to Google, look, see if there's any advisories out there or any research out there on the particular car brand that you're considering buying. I definitely have my preference on who I think is doing it right and who really isn't considering it a priority. But it's interesting because the car buyer, the mentality and the pre-sales questions of the car buyer is changing now with these with the new generation, like the millennials and these newer generations. Is that before the questions would be, hey, how fast can this go? Does it have leather?
Right. How loud is the stereo? Yeah.
Can I Facebook while I'm driving? Can I Instagram while I'm driving? And it's all about connectivity and what can you do and what can you not do in your car?
Yeah.
Does it have autopilot? Can it drive for me? Can it parallel park for me? All these additional technology. Ask the security questions. When I go out and I buy something and it's something that I'm relying on for safety measure, for life and safety, I'm going to ask those security questions. Hey, who makes the head unit in this particular car? Okay, this is XYZ, manufacturer. I won't name drop in this podcast, but I'll figure out, who the maker of that head unit is, and like, okay, do I have any experience with them, or have I done a pen test for them, or is there anything published out there? But I guess it's just being more vigilant, being more inquisitive of who you're buying from and what it is you're buying. It needs to be a lot more than just questions about connectivity and technology. It needs to also be about security. And when we're buying these, smart doorbells or smart cameras, those kind of things, we need to be asking these kind of questions. Especially if I'm putting a smart lock on my door, I'm going to go out there and look if there's been anyone talking about, hacking that smart lock.
Yeah.
It's just, basic things.
Yeah, no, yeah, and I mean, that's going to be the real difficult sort of message here is getting people to understand that they need to understand this. Like, I don't think most people are even thinking in terms of this. Like, when we were pitched this idea for this episode, I was not even thinking about the idea that connected cars could be hacked. So I think there's going to be a lot of messaging that needs to be done to let people know that this is even something they need to be worried about.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I don't know if you've seen this, but there was that Jeep that was hacked, and they took remote control of the steering wheel.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we're over the internet. We're able to push the brakes, push the gas, turn on the stereo. It's scary. It's very scary. I mean, thinking about what you're capable of doing, and even in the penetration test that I've done for over the last decade, it's scary. The kind of things you see. I mean, I've seen pre-computed, unencrypted keys sitting in world readable directories on the file system. OEMs using the same initial key across every device in the entire fleet. Not understanding basic PKI security and secure key storage of where are they storing these private keys. Just the basic stuff that we as cybersecurity engineers were dealing with and were mediating as vulnerabilities 20 years ago are showing up in connected car components.
Wow.
It's just really, really dumb mistakes. Just humans are the weakest link in security. Yep. We will always be the weakest link in security. And what can be made by humans can be broken by humans. And until we get that we're not infallible, that we are going to get it wrong, we need to start, we need to stop moving towards this speed to market over security, because security needs to trump speed to market. It just has to. In this day and age, you have 5G becoming a reality. Cellular phone carriers putting out 5G, it's here. More and more connectivity is going to create more and more of an attack surface. So we need to get that.
So you mentioned it just very briefly, but you said we, to move on to it later. But what about vehicle to vehicle connections? You were saying that's a whole other issue. What's going on over there?
Yeah, it's crazy. So what you have is V2X, which is vehicle to everything, V2V, V2I, which is vehicle to infrastructure. You have in-vehicle networking. It's a whole other world when you're talking about a car talking to another car. So what's happening with V2V is you and I can be driving down the road, right? Two completely different cars, and your car hits a pothole. Okay, you hit a pothole. Yep. Maybe your tire goes out, whatever. Your car can actually send information to my car in a V2V world and let my car know that there's a pothole ahead. It's crazy. I mean, I'm not, and I don't want the listeners to get me wrong. I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. I mean, this is, with innovation, with connectivity comes really great things. Yeah. I think everything in my house is smart at this point. I'm just waiting for my smart oven.
Right.
It's just, the thing is that it's not that it's bad. It's that we need to understand the risk and the threat when you're talking about vehicle to vehicle communication, or vehicles being able to communicate to outside vehicles. If you have connectivity between two vehicles, what does that tell you? It tells you the potential for man in the middle attacks, right? If I can send communication to your car, letting you know I'm the car in front of you, there's traffic ahead, or there is a pothole ahead, and your car can take action based on my information I'm sending it, imagine how that can be exploited.
Yeah.
Right? And we already know through the bruises and through the slaps on the hand that we don't get authentication right. We're still trying to figure out passwordless authentication and MFA. You still have banks where you can create an account and MFA is not enforced. Passwords are the only thing you need.
Right.
We're still figuring out. We need to understand that you need to authenticate the messages within a car. Let me give you an example, Chris. So cars are made up of a bunch of ECUs, electronic control units, right? There's hundreds of ECUs now within cars. The way CAN works is it's a single broadcast domain, right? It's a single collision domain. If you remember hubs, So They were a single broadcast domain. You could connect to a hub. I don't even know if you can buy a hub anymore, but you can connect to a port on a hub and throw up a sniffer, ethereal at the time, and sniff and see all the packets of all the communication between systems talking. This is the same thing on CAN. ECUs receive every message on the CAN bus, every message, whether it's destined for them or not. And they make a decision as far as whether or not that ECU should take action that message was meant for them, right? There's no authentication. I can pretend to be an ECU and send a message to the ECU that's controlling your steering column or controlling whatever, your braking or your acceleration, and it will take action because there's no authentication. The messages are not authenticated. And that's the problem. It's really just understanding the basic tenets of confidentiality, integrity, and availability with cars, right? I mean, man-in-the-middle attack was the most common attack vector when I would go after a connected car. When I wanted to breach or compromise a car, MIDM was the most common attack vector, person in the middle, right? Or woman in the middle. That.
Sure.
Pretending to be the telematics control unit and sending messages to the head unit or vice versa, when there's a trust relationship between the two because authentication wasn't being enforced.
Yeah. Right? Now, are the solutions to this, is this as attainable? I mean, you were saying with, a car unto itself that, it would be, it's a fairly low cost thing to, include a firewall or segmentation or micro-segmentation. Is vehicle to vehicle, are these issues equally solvable, but for, the worry about the bottom line and money and so forth?
Yeah, I've never been a believer in the fact that something is impossible, right? Yeah. I mean, look at my career, right? Starting a company at 17, anything's possible.
Right.
It is possible to secure against these attacks. The problem is, we've got developers hard coding API keys in their code, right? And we haven't even talked about that yet. Like, cars are communicating over APIs. I don't know if you know this or not, but Akamai just released a report that more than 87% of the traffic on the internet is now API traffic. That means that a majority of it is not human to application. It's thing to thing, right? So, it is possible. The problem is that we're not learning from history. And whether it's hard coding keys in source code or, implementing a single wireless network for all of these different devices within the car to share with the passengers and their mobile phones, it's taking the time to think through these things and making sure that automobile makers and OEMs have cybersecurity engineers on their team. And that's a very common finding for me in meeting OEMs and car makers, is that there's no cybersecurity people involved in the product development lifecycle. Why?
Yeah.
Where are the cybersecurity people? You're bringing in me to do a penetration test on a product that you've made that security engineers were not involved in and we're not a part of? Like, that makes no sense to me. It's like asking someone, I don't know, to come check the security of your house when you've got no locks on the doors or you have a sign hanging saying, come on in.
Yeah.
Why are you asking me to test the security of your house if you've got no locks?
Right.
That sort of thing.
Well, that's a perfect transition to my next question. Again, we're the Cyberwork podcast, and we like to help people who are trying to get, climb the ladder in cybersecurity into their careers of their dreams. So for our listeners who are trying to move up the ladder, it sounds like they're not, but can there be jobs or positions opening up that would address these types of connected auto issues?
Yes, and more should be women.
Another thing we've been talking about for about 2 months now. Great. Yes, absolutely. Agreed.
The gender gap in cybersecurity is still way too huge. So the answer is definitely yes. And I'm a huge advocate of this. And I do urge your listeners to reach out to me on LinkedIn and Twitter and follow me. I can definitely help educate and guide. I love that. I think there needs to be more women in cybersecurity. There needs to be more people in connected car cybersecurity. It is a very labyrinthine area of cybersecurity. You do have to understand some other basics and principles, but it's not unachievable. There is definitely a career path here. what is the right path? I don't know.
Okay.
I'm a packet monkey. Like I come from layer 3. I love looking at packets. I just love just staring at packets all day.
Yep.
And so that really helped me when I would look at payloads of a packet or look at, the headers of a packet in intrusion analysis. And so there's definitely a career trajectory. Let me say this. It should definitely include studying for the CISSP. Now, let me qualify that. Okay, I'm going to say this, and my car is going to get keyed for saying this. I don't care. You can buy my car.
We literally get two comments per video. You'll be fine.
Okay, cool. Great. This will probably generate 200.
Yeah, this right.
So the thing is that I don't believe that you should be a certification mill. Don't get me wrong. I met some brilliant penetration testers, Victor Westbrook, I've never seen anyone with more certification, but incredibly brilliant and knows his stuff. But there are people that will go out there and get certifications just for the certification and the acronym after their name and can't tell me the headers of a packet. So I've seen someone with all of the Cisco certifications in the world after their name, but can't tell me what the protocol header of a packet is or what the IP header and what order it comes in after the Ethernet header, that sort of thing. So what I'm saying is study for the CISSP. You don't necessarily need to go get the CISSP, but studying for it will give you so many of the basics of operating. It's like, they say it's like a mile wide and an inch thick. You'll learn so much just by studying the CIA triad and some of these other basic principles. So the certified ethical hacking course, like study for it. You don't have to go take the exam and get it, but study for it because it will teach you so much.
We would prefer that you take the exam as well.
Yes. I'm not saying you should.
We hear at Infosec, of course. I mean, you're
yes. Sorry.
The words of Alissa Knight do not necessarily represent the parent company.
Let's refilm that segment.
No, we're good. We're good.
Here's the thing. I have certifications.
Sure.
I got the GX certified intrusion analyst course. I did the Infosec Institute stuff. Those are good things. It proves to employers and proves to people that you know what you're talking about. That you passed the exam, that you did what it took. But what I'm saying is that just because you take the exam and fail it, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the end of the world, because you still gained something from studying from it. Right. Whether it's an Infosec Institute exam or course or, whomever it is, you learn so much just by studying for that cert. And, I guess what I'm saying is it shouldn't replace practical experience.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Right. Certifications are important and you need them. Some places won't even interview unless you have that cert.
Right. But
you need to make sure that you also combine it with practical experience. Right.
Yeah, and I think it's like you said, it's a difference between the mindset of the cert collector who wants to catch them all versus having the right tool for the right job.
Exactly. I mean, it'll get your foot in the door, but you need to be able to explain what a packet is after you do that.
Yeah, if you need this information.
Because I've seen so many people flame out in the interview. It's like, I'm interviewing you for a job. Let's try that again. Yeah. I'm interviewing you for a job, and you got your foot in the door because you have the GCIA or you have the XYZ, certification. But I'm asking you to tell me, what shell code looks like in a packet.
Yeah.
How can you have this cert but not explain that? Right. So it really calls into question, like, yes, get the certs, they'll get you in the door, but you need to be able to survive the interview after you get into the door.
All right, so let's you brought it up, and I'm thrilled you did, because we've been talking to women in cybersecurity for a while now. So what are your strategies for getting more women involved in cybersecurity? What have been the roadblocks? Have you experienced specific, discrimination or setbacks? Okay, you want to?
For sure.
Give us some horror stories.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
It is real. It is like, the wage gap and the numbers, around that are real, of course. But I've definitely experienced it as well. I'll meet someone and, I'll get the question like, okay, are you the marketing person?
You're the second. No. You're the second female cybersecurity expert in 2 days who's had that exact. Are you the marketer?
Yeah,
that was the exact phrase. Yeah.
Are you the salesperson? No. Yeah. I'm the cybersecurity engineer. I'm the one who's going to be performing this work. What do you mean? It's just I don't know. I don't know what it is. I
Yeah.
don't, me, and it's funny because the most brilliant hackers I've ever met are women,
Hmm.
and dude, there's definitely a lot there. And now I'm gonna throw something at you.
Do it.
Uh, I'm transgendered.
Okay.
So not only am I dealing with the whole, oh, you're a woman thing,
Right.
but oh, you're trans,
Right.
oh, you're a trans woman,
Hmm.
and so there is a very machismo. Cybersecurity is a very more elite than thou, very machismo industry. I
Oh yeah.
took a break from the cybersecurity industry specifically because of this.
Hmm.
There's a lot of arrogance and it's a lot of jerks in this industry, and I remember, and I don't know if you remember this or not, Chris, but it was not that long ago when you would be walking around DEF CON and you would see, girls walking around with green hair, blue hair, and they would be referred to as scene whores.
Yeah.
That was an acceptable term to refer to women.
Hmm.
And that wasn't that long ago.
No.
And so, I think there really is, we need to change. We need to evolve.
Yep.
And I think the more women that get into cybersecurity and prove that that we can write exploits, that we can hang with the best of them, that's where I think it'll start to change. And I think it's really maybe just I'm not saying that these people who assume that I'm a salesperson or assume that I'm marketing, that they're bad people.
Right.
They just weren't thinking before they said anything.
Yeah.
Sometimes that wire is broken for some people.
Right.
Or, maybe they just run into a lot of women that are in marketing roles or a lot of women who are in sales roles.
Yeah.
I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I don't
Mhm.
they may not be sexist. They may be the biggest advocates of flying the flag for women in cybersecurity, but they just weren't thinking before they said it.
Yeah.
Or
And it's also a perception issue within, if you're so used to the men are the security experts, the women
Mhm.
and that,
Yeah.
with less than 25% of the cybersecurity workforce being women, like you're just sort of reflecting back what you're seeing every day.
Yeah, exactly. And or in that cocktail party, like my fiance, she's so on top of it, I'm also a lesbian.
Mhm.
So I'm flying all the flags.
Oh yeah.
One is just not good enough.
No. Oh man. Knock
So
the doors down.
yeah, like my fiance, she'll tell someone at at a party or whatever, like, oh, I have no idea what she does, something with computers. I think that just kind of gets ingrained in
Yeah.
men, and
Yeah.
they go back to the office and they just regurgitate that, like, oh, girls just don't know how to explain what an
Mhm.
IP is,
Right.
or whatever. I don't know. It's just I don't think people are I like to believe that people are just genuinely good people and they're not these evil people. They're like,
Yeah.
we must keep the women down. I
Right.
think it's just history kind of evolving and people need to evolve with history. That yes, women were historically in these sales and marketing and support roles or reception roles, but they can also now be in cybersecurity roles, or
Yes.
they are capable of earning just as much, if not more, than men.
Right.
And it's just we just have to evolve.
Yeah, so let's talk strategies about that. Do you have any, because this requires a pretty deep bench. It's not enough to say like, okay, we're going to have a ton of women in, help desk roles or whatever. Like, how do you, what is the strategy for getting women involved in, managerial roles, leadership roles? Like,
Yeah,
what
that's a,
it's I
I
mean,
can nerd
it's a
out.
multi-tiered strategy, and I've asked it everybody, and obviously there's no right answer, but I'd love to hear your take on it.
Yeah, so here's the thing, and then, like you said earlier, I have a lot of war stories. Like I had a client who actually made a sexual proposal to me, in an effort to try and get that contract with them. I've had, and on the flip side with the trans issue,
Mhm.
transphobia, I've had a client not want to do business with us because he didn't want to do business with a company that was run by a transgendered woman.
Mhm.
Just stupid stuff. That guy, of course, doesn't work there anymore, but just really ridiculous things. You run into it. Like a woman in a decision-making role is not, that she would be willing to, to sleep with someone for a contract because we're a woman, because we're
Mhm.
women, or something ridiculous like that. So there are those war stories. As far as how to fix it, I think the more women we have at the conference stage, talking about the fact that they just created hardware based malware,
Yep.
or, that they just, figured out how to create a rogue BTS and compromise your thermostat with it, or whatever it may be. I think the more role models we have, this will start to change. Women in leadership. Some of my favorite CISOs and CEOs are women. Sherry Ryan, the CISO over at Juniper, Jennifer Sunshine Steffens. I would give my life for her. She's CEO of IOActive. Very smart ladies. The more we have, Caroline Ruiz, she's my CEO of Latin America at Bryan Thorne, Mexico. Just women bring an awesome dynamic to the boardroom. We bring an awesome dynamic to the leadership role. I always make fun of, I love the story. Like, I believe that, and I know I'm stereotyping here, so don't kick me, but I think DNA wise, genetically, women are just a lot more patient than men. And where I've seen male hackers just kind of going like, okay, we're quickly in. I don't care how noisy we are. I don't care how much of a mess we make. Just get in, pop the service, get a shell. It's quick and loud. It doesn't matter, whereas a woman, we'll take our time, low and slow. We'll, okay, let's not make as much noise. Let's not make a mess of the kitchen, whatever it may be.
Sure.
I just find that we're just a lot more methodical and a lot more patient and a lot more, it's just ingrained in our DNA as mothers, as, just being more patient, and until you get to the end goal.
And that's worth noting. Like, I think that there's the sort of detractors who say, you're just trying to get a numbers game, or you're just trying to like fill some sort of quota. But like, I try to stress over and over that, a diversity of backgrounds and opinions, male, female, queer, straight, people of color, you're going to get different experiences. You're going to get different tech based on whether people have, chronic illnesses. They, you never would think to, make the buttons this way or whatever until you've
It is. It's that whole argument that men are from Mars, women are from Venus, but both planets offer great input to the same situation and a different way of looking at things. Same thing with men. I've seen men bring some great, thought-provoking input to a situation that, that I may not have thought about, or that, so I think I agree with you completely. And I read a lot of self-help books, and one of the things that I'm doing a lot of ring on right now is writing. And you'll see that authors will talk about this, that stop, and this was geared towards men, this paragraph was, stop writing what you're writing and then pushing it out there. Bring it to your wife and have her read it and let her give you your input on it. It really is, there is something ingrained in our DNA and our individual idiosyncratic differences in genders that just cause us to look at things differently than a man, or a man differently than a woman. And I think those need to be exploited to make better products and better outcomes.
Yeah. Now, so as we wrap up, this has been awesome. I could talk to you all afternoon, but as we wrap up today, what are the security challenges, especially in connected cars, but just in general, what are some of the security challenges you see or are looking on the horizon for 2019, 2020 and beyond?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'm going to close it out with API security.
Okay.
The average number of APIs that a company runs these days is 420. Wow. You've got Bezos, Jeff Bezos, who went to Amazon and said that anyone who builds a new application and doesn't do it as a microservice behind an API will lose their job. Like, everything is an API economy now. It's the API economy. And so that creates a massive attack surface because people are not securing APIs properly. This extends to connected car. This extends to mobile apps. Just a few weeks ago, actually, Chris, I dropped some research on where I downloaded 30 financial services mobile apps and decompiled them, found that in every one of those financial services apps, 29 out of the 30 were not shielding their code. We're not putting any, tamper detection in it. We're not doing any white box encryption. And I could see everything in it, and including the API keys, including the tokens, including AWS credentials, and being able to then know that, okay, that backend API is not authenticating anything beyond the API key and API token. So if I just simply add that bearer token into my authorization header, this bank or this credit card company is not doing any other authentication. I can pull whatever I want from that database. So it's an understanding that that, everything now, the days of the monolithic app are gone, and everything has moved to microservices.
Wow. So if people want to find out more about Alissa Knight or Aite Group, where should they go? You mentioned your LinkedIn page.
Yes. So please definitely follow me on Twitter at Alissa Knight.
Okay.
And that's Alissa with an I.
Yep.
ALISSAKNIGHT. LinkedIn. I'm big on LinkedIn. And, you can even follow me on Instagram if you want to see pictures of my food.
Cool. And when is you said there's a book coming out? What's the pub date on that?
Yes, it should be out in the next couple months. I'm in the process of doing copy edit review, that's like 2 years in the making. So it's been 2 years of my life coming to an end.
And the title is?
Hacking Connected Cars: Tactics, Techniques, and Procedures. So it'll be through Wiley. It's available for pre-order on Amazon right now. You can also pre-order it on Barnes & Noble if that's your bookstore of choice.
Alissa Knight, thank you so much for joining us today.
Chris, it's been a lot of fun.
Okay, my pleasure. Thank you. And thank you all for listening and watching. If you enjoyed today's video, you can find many more on our YouTube page. Just go to YouTube and type in Cyberwork with Infosec to check out our collection of tutorials, interviews, and past webinars. If you'd rather have us in your ears during your workday, all of our videos are also available as audio podcasts. Just search Cyberwork with Infosec in your favorite podcast catcher. To see our current promotional offers available for podcast listeners and to learn more about our Infosec Pro Live bootcamps, Infosec Skills on Demand training library, and Infosec IQ security awareness and training platform, go to infosecinstitute.com/podcast or click the link in the description. Thanks once again to Alissa Knight, and thank you all for watching and listening. We'll speak to you next week.